10.3, Example 5. In this example, we're going to look at slopes of polar curves and how to determine the slope and the tangent line of a graph. So the first thing I need to talk about is the actual slope. So if we're given slope in terms of dy dx, that is going to be equal to dy d theta divided by dy dx. And the reason for that is if you divide a fraction by a fraction, so we have dy d theta divided by dx d theta. This would be dy over d theta times d theta over dx. So the d thetas cancel, so you get the dy over dx back. And that's why this is equal to that. Alright, so in example 5, we're going to find the slope of the rose curve r equals 2 sine 3 theta of the point where theta is equal to pi over 6. And then we're going to find the equation of the tangent line. So step 1 was we're going to find the slope, and step 2 is we're going to find the equation of that tangent line. So the first thing I should do when I read that two words tangent line, I'm immediately going to write down y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is go ahead and write things in terms of y and x, because I want y and x in my answer. I want dy dx. And so to find that, I need dy d theta over dx d theta. So y is equal to, remember that polar curves can be written parametrically as r sine theta, and then x is r cosine theta. So this would be 2 sine 3 theta times sine of theta, and this would be 2 sine 3 theta cosine theta. So now we just need to find the slope. So dy dx is equal to dy d theta divided by dx d theta. What I want to do is take the derivative of y with respect to theta, and then take the derivative of x with respect to theta. So I'm just going to take one extra step to go ahead and write that out. So I want the derivative with respect to theta of 2 sine 3 theta sine theta divided by the derivative with respect to theta of 2 sine 3 theta cosine theta. And then after you do the derivative, you're going to go ahead and plug in pi over 6. And this is something that if you put into your calculator, you'll get negative radical 3. But we're going to go ahead and do it by hand, because these things can come up on a no calculator section of the test. So it's kind of like L'Hopital's rule, because you're not doing the quotient rule even though there's a fraction. So we just do them separately. So let's go ahead and do the numerator part. So I'm going to need the product rule because there's two functions. So it's 2. The derivative of sine of 3 theta is 3 cosine 3 theta sine of theta plus sine of 3 theta cosine theta. And then all divided by, and now we're going to go ahead and do the derivative of this part. So I bring out the 2 because it's a constant, and it's going to be almost the same thing. It's going to be 3 cosine 3 theta cosine theta, and then the derivative of cosine is negative sine, so we get minus sine of 3 theta sine of theta. And now all we have to do is go ahead and plug in our pi over 6 value. So the 2's cancel, and we get 3 cosine, plugging in pi over 6, I get pi over 2, sine pi over 6, plus sine pi over 2 cosine pi over 6, all divided by 3 cosine pi over 2 cosine pi over 6 minus sine pi over 2 sine pi over 6. Alright, so cosine of pi over 2 is just 0. So this whole thing goes to 0. So this pieces are gone. Sine of pi over 2 is 1. And cosine of pi over 6 is going to be radical 3 over 2. And sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. So all of this will simplify down to negative radical 3 over 2 divided by 1/2, which is negative radical 3 over 2 times 2 over 1, so negative radical 3. So that is our slope. Just to check to see if we're correct here, let's go ahead and look at the graph real quick. So here is the graph of r is equal to 2 sine 3 theta. And if I plug in pi over 6 for theta, I get this point right here on the curve. And so I want to go ahead and see the tangent line really quick. And so my slope should be negative 1.73, which I think is the square root of 3. Yep, square root of 3 is 1.73, so we do have the correct slope. Alright, last step is to go ahead and create the equation for our tangent line. So we have y minus y1 is equal to m x minus x1. And we got to find y1 and we got to find x1. So remember, we have our equations. Y is equal to 2 sine 3 theta sine theta. And all we have to do now is go ahead and plug in pi over 6. So we get y is equal to 2 sine pi over 2 sine pi over 6. So it's going to be 2 times 1 times 1/2, which gives me 1. And we do the same thing for x. So x is equal to 2 sine 3 theta cosine theta. So this is going to be 2 sine pi over 2 cosine pi over 6. So I get x is equal to 2 times 1 times radical 3 over 2. So x is equal to radical 3. So I just plug those into my equation now. Y minus 1 is equal to negative radical 3 x minus radical 3. And you could stop there, or we can go ahead and we can distribute and simplify. Y minus 1 negative radical 3x plus 3, and then I add 1 to both sides. And that's how I got the same equation that the technology got.